Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I'm going to be reviewing the Colourpop Wild Nothing collection. This is their summer slash Coachella slash desert collection, and it is a pretty big collection. We have two new formulations to talk about, so I already know that this video is going to be a long one. I have my green tea here with me, and I hope you guys have your snacks as well, because I know I'm gonna be talking a lot. Like, do you guys want to see my notes? Okay, I have 3 pages of notes here to chat with you guys, so it's gonna be a long video. I do want to say before we get started is that I did purchase part of the collection with my own money, and then a couple days later Colourpop sent me the entire collection. So I do have the entire collection right in front of me, but I'm not gonna be reviewing the Jelly Mud shadows. I just didn't want to open it and just sort of like waste product, because I don't really use the Jelly Mud shadows too much. So I just want to let you guys know that half of this collection was purchased myself and half the collection was gifted to me, but that is never going to sway my opinions whatsoever. I just want to be transparent with you guys with this kind of stuff. So yeah, with that being said, let's just go ahead and jump straight into the review. Alright, let's go ahead and talk about the collection. I want to give you guys a little breakdown of what's in here and the prices. So we first have the Wild Nothing eyeshadow palette. This is a 12 pan eyeshadow palette, and it is $18 US. There are 3 pressed blushes, and these are $10 US. They come in a little compact. This is sort of like a new packaging, but we have seen it in their Soul Body highlights, and it does come with a mirror as well. We then have 2 Jelly Mud shadows, and these are $8 US. And then we have the new Luxe lip oils. There are 5 shades in total, but I did see that they came out with a couple more shades for their new collection. But in this collection there are 5, and they are $8 US each. But if you do want to get it in a little kit, it is $38 US. And then lastly, we have the new creme shadows. There are 4 shades in total, and these are $8 US each. And if you wanted to purchase the entire collection, it is $134 US. So the first product that I want to review from the collection is the eyeshadow palette. Typically in most collections, the eyeshadow palette is the thing that I'm most excited for, but this time around the eyeshadow palette wasn't the thing that I was most excited for. I don't know if it was just like new formulations that I was excited to try, but I wasn't really wowed at first glance by this palette. So here are the shadows. There are no pressed glitters in this palette, but you do have 2 Super Shock shadows. There are 3 metallics, and there are 7 mattes, and some of them are satin shadows as well, but we're just gonna count them as matte shadows. So yeah, when I first saw this palette, I wasn't really wowed by it. I feel like the tones wasn't really screaming to me. I think the concept of this collection is really pretty. I love it, but I feel like they could have added more like earthy tones to this collection, but this is pretty muted, I would say. There are a couple of peaches, a lot of like neutral mauvey tones. We have the metallic green in here. One of you guys told me that you purchased this palette just because of that green, so that's definitely the style of the show. So it's like a little mix of color story in this palette. I've actually been using this palette every single day ever since I got it for like the past week, so I could really get my thoughts down, and I've been using it off camera as well, not just for my 3 looks. And I really did enjoy using it, but I feel like I was just leaning towards the peachy tones in here. There are like 2 peachy mattes that I was using a lot, and the dark brown as well, but I feel like these peachy tones I could have just used my Baby Got Peach palette. And every other shadow, it's pretty, but I feel like I wasn't really gravitating towards it as much, and I don't know, I just wasn't really vibing with the palette. I do like the palette, and I will get my use out of it. I like the 3 looks that I did. I will say the 3 looks that I created are pretty smoky, a little bit more dramatic. The overall vibe of this palette is pretty light to medium. You are going to create more light everyday sort of eye looks, so if you are a person that does a lot of those eye looks, then I think you would enjoy this palette. And you do have the option of taking it to more of a dramatic side without taking away so many of the lighter shadows. So the only way you can take your eye looks into more of like a dramatic smoky eye is just this one dark brown, and everything else is going to give you a light look, and that's who I envisioned this palette for. But for a person that already has a lot of the Colourpop palettes, I didn't really feel like this palette was a really good addition to my collection. Like, if I didn't have this palette, I wouldn't be like, oh, I'm really missing something, you know? I'm not gonna say this palette is bad, I'm still gonna use it, but I just feel like it wasn't a really great addition to my collection, and I feel like that's how I want to review these palettes from now on. It's like, was this a good addition to my collection? And for me personally, and this palette personally, I don't think it was. I mean, of course that green shadow is very beautiful. You'll see in my comparisons that I couldn't really find a good comparison to it. It's almost getting really hard to review Colourpop palettes now because there's just so many crossovers, and I own so many of their palettes that it's like, I don't know what to say, you know? So I think for me personally, I don't think this palette was like a really great addition. It's not going to be my everyday staple. It's a palette I'll probably use here and there, but I think it's also a palette that it might get drowned out into my collection. So that is just my take on it, my personal opinion. I do want to dive a little bit deeper, and this is going to be a new section of my review. I'm gonna go ahead and talk about each individual shade. I'm gonna show you live swatches. We're also gonna go over the comparisons as we go shade by shade. So let me know if you guys like this section. Let me know if it's too much, it's not necessary. I just sort of feel a little bit repetitive with my Colourpop reviews because I pretty much say the same thing. Like for me, you know, blah 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 blah. For you, you might like it. It's sort of the same. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into these shades. So let me know nicely down below your feedback. So the first shade we have in the palette is called Crystal Cove, and this is a satin shadow. So it's a matte base and it has little specks of glitter in it. I would say for this satin shadow, you can just use it as a matte because once you place it on your eyes, the glitters do sort of fly away. So this would be a really nice inner corner highlight, or you could use this to set down your eye base. Surprisingly, I didn't find that many comparisons. I think the tone of was just like a little bit off. The second shadow in the palette is called Sultan, and this is a super shock shadow. I would describe this to be a gold lime. Like the underbase is a light gold, and then the reflex is a lime green. And this is a shadow that when I look in the palette, it looks like, oh, I could do this really easy, but it was actually surprisingly pretty unique. The only comparison I could find is from the Sailor Moon palette, which is pretty in high demand as well. The third shadow we have is called Coastline. This is a metallic shadow, but I would describe this metallic to be more of like a pearlized or a satin shadow because it is very smooth and it doesn't have that very like foiled looking metallicness to it, if that makes sense. So the shade is more of like a peachy champagne, and I would definitely use this as an inner corner highlight. I love these type of shadows to highlight that area because it's not too intense and glittery like a metallic shadow. Then we have Top Down. This is a matte light muted peach, and I do feel like this shadow is pretty comparable to a lot of the other peachy transitions that we have seen from Colourpop. We then have Morningside, which is a medium peach, and what I saw is that a lot of the peaches that I had leaned more towards the pinky side of the peach family, but this one is definitely more to the orange side of the peach family. So there is a slight difference, but I have some here for you guys to compare. Now for Seashells, this is the star of the palette, the one that's probably catching everybody's eyes. So I would describe it to be like a light muted icy metallic green, and the one comparison that I could find is from a discontinued palette, is from the Dream Street palette in the shade Kaleidoscope. I would say Kaleidoscope is more on the bluey side, so it's like an icy muted blue, and then Seashells is an icy muted green. They have the same sort of tone, but the color of it is just slightly different. So I feel like once it's on the eyes, you're gonna get a similar vibe. So if you have the Dream Street palette and you only wanted this palette for this specific shadow, then maybe, I don't know, just look at the comparisons and maybe you could reconsider. Next shadow is called All Cove, and I would describe this to be a metallic peachy orange with white reflex. So this is another metallic shadow, but it's different from that typical foiled metallic. This one, the little glitters really sparkle through. If you were to put like a flashlight across your eye, the glitters will really sparkle. It's really pretty. Really love this shadow, but I do find that there are quite a few comparisons. Next up we have another Super Shock shadow. It is the shade Spirited, and I would say in the pan this looks more of like a light gold, but once it's swatched it seems more bronzy, like a deeper bronze. Definitely a shadow that I would use in companion with a different palette, perhaps with my It's a Princess palette. This would be a really nice inner third sort of shade. Now we have Vagabond. This is a muted neutral mauvey brown, I would say. The bottom row definitely has more of the cooler tones. Well, they pull a lot cooler on my skin tone. I do have a very like olivey golden undertone, so a lot of these neutral shades that might appear neutral on you, on me, it looks very, very cool. But I think it's nice to have this shadow in the palette because I feel like Colourpop doesn't really have a lot of cool tone shadows, and I know not everybody loves warm tones, they do like cool tones, so there is quite a few neutral slash cool tones in this palette. Next up we have Hot Springs. This is a satin shadow, so it's a matte base once again, and this is like a dusty pink. Very pretty, more on the neutral sort of cool tone side. I tried it for the first time today and I really liked it layered on top of the next shadow, which is called Come Together. So I would describe Come Together to be like a cool tone muted mauvey brown, which is exactly how I described Vagabond. It's slightly different. I feel like Come Together is darker than Vagabond. And lastly we have No Bounds, and this is just a dark chocolate brown. It is extremely dark, and I would say when it comes to this intense of a dark shadow, sometimes they can be a little bit patchy, but I didn't have any issues with that. I actually really like this dark brown. It's a lot darker than some of the browns that I have. And the next category we're going to talk about are the blushes. So there are 3 of them, and all of these are satin finishes, so they're not a complete matte. They do have a bit of sheen to it, so I personally like matte blushes, but I've been more open to these finishes because you don't really need to go in with a highlighter, so you're skipping out on one step, and it just gives you like a really soft highlight on your cheek. I personally would avoid applying it so close here. This is where like I have the most pores, so applying something that has a bit of sheen to it is going to sort of emphasize those pores, so that's like my tip there. I think it was a nice addition to my collection because I do stick to more matte blushes, and it's nice that I have these, and the shades of these are super pretty. So we'll talk about On the Horizon first, and Colourpop describes this to be a soft warm pink with pinpoints of gold and silver pearls. Really nice pinky blush. It's good for every day. I would say in my collection I do have a lot of these sort of tones, so I would say this one is one that I was least excited about because in my collection I already have a lot of pinky blushes, and this one wasn't really anything so special to me. But then we have Wayfarer, and Colourpop describes this to be a soft warm peach with pinpoints of gold and silver pearls. This one is so pretty. I feel like this is going to be my new everyday peachy orange blush. If you guys have tried Kathleen's blush in So Retrograde and you thought that was too orange, it's a little bit too intense for everyday, I think this would be a really nice dupe. It's like a sort of muted version of that, and I guess it's a little bit more wearable for everyday because I love Kathleen's So Retrograde blush as well, but I feel like it's a little bit too deep for everyday, you know what I mean? And the last blush we have is called Crossroads, and this is described to be a muted terracotta with pinpoints of gold and silver pearls. I think this blush on a deeper skin tone would look so beautiful. I think if I was a little bit tanner, this would suit me a little bit more. It's slightly a little bit too dark. If I use a light hand with it, I definitely could get away with it, but definitely when I have a bit more tan, this will be a really pretty summertime blush. I mean, this tone is just so me. Alright, now onto the creme shadows. This is a completely new formulation from Colourpop. So on the website it says that this is a long wearing creamy eyeshadow that are easy to wear, crease proof and water resistant. I would say that these are pretty long wearing. I've worn Moonbeam a lot, like off camera as well, and I would say they are long wearing because they are super matte. If you had oily eyelids, this would be a really great option for you because they are pretty matte, almost so matte that they like tug a little bit. You just really gotta warm the product up, and it's winter in New Zealand, it's pretty cold, so a lot of my makeup that are like in the pots can harden and not be as soft if it was like summertime, for example. But these really remind me of the MAC paint pots, and I personally haven't used MAC in years. MAC is not cruelty free, and I stopped using them. How long have I been cruelty free now? Maybe like 5 or 6 years now, so it's been a really long time since I've tried anything from MAC. And I have tried the paint pots. I know paint pots was like the thing. Your eyeshadow wouldn't look good if you didn't have a MAC paint pot. Painterly, soft ochre, and I had a brown one that's really similar to Moonbeam. So I would say the colors are actually very similar. Well, from memory, I don't have them anymore. From memory, I would say they are quite similar to the MAC paint pot. So if you still use the MAC paint pots and you want to have like an alternative cheaper option, this might be something for you to check out. Or if you wanted to try the MAC paint pots but they're too expensive because they are hella expensive, this would be a nice, I guess, dupe for that as well. I would say they pretty much do exactly the same thing in my opinion. I was just a so-so fan of the paint pots, but yeah, for these cream shadows you could use them as an eye base or you could use them as an all-over one and done eyeshadow sort of product. I wouldn't say they are crease proof. If I wore them alone, they definitely will crease a little bit because I just have a lot of folds on my eyelids, like a lot. But if you were to put eyeshadow on top, I don't see any creasing happening. So we first have a Bronco, and this is a soft warm yellow. This would be comparable to the shade Soft Ochre, I believe, from MAC. And this is a shade that I found just super patchy on my eyes. It was a little bit more drying than the others. I don't know why, but it was just super patchy. It was quite hard to blend out. I don't know if it was just my skin that day when I was using it, but I did have some issues with that. I will, however, continue to use it and just try it out because it might have just been my skin. But although it was patchy when I applied it, when I applied eyeshadow on top of it, it wasn't patchy. We then have Laurel, and this is described to be a soft pinky nude, and this is probably the one that's going to be closest to my skin tone, but in like a pinky version. But this one did go on really well. I think this would work as a really good eye base. Then we have Camouflage. This is described to be a warm mid-tone nude. I would use this one on its own because on my skin it can look like a light eyeshadow color, but I would pair this one with like a light transition shadow maybe in the crease just to warm it up a little bit more. And then we have Moonbeam. This is described to be a warm deep nude. Actually, my favorite is the one that works best on me. I have used this on its own on my eyes, and I've also used this underneath eyeshadows as well. I think it's a really quick way to get a very warm eye look going quick. This could be the first thing you place down on your eyes, and you have just like a really nice warm brown all over your eyes, add a transition, and you could just add a wing, lashes, you're good to go. You don't need to go in with further eyeshadow. So this is the one that I definitely will be using the most. And finally, we are on to the last product, and the product that I personally was the most excited for. We have the new Luxe lip oils. If you guys watched my Colourpop lip guide, at the end of the video I shared with you guys what I would like to see from Colourpop, and I said lip oils, and then they came out with lip oil. So I was anticipating this, so I'm so excited. Colourpop describes these to be nourishing lip oils packed with antioxidants, rich chamomile and calendula oils. We have 5 shades, and I think the range of these shades that they picked out are really good because although they are lip oils, they are pretty sheer. You can see a difference between each shade because they do have a slight tint that you can see the difference, and all of these are an opaque lip oil. I did see that the new ones they came out in their new Succulent collection do have glitters in them, but these ones are all opaque lip oil, which I do prefer. Although I haven't tried the new ones with the glitters in it, I feel like I'm going to like the matte ones a little bit more. As for the formulation, how will I describe this? It is super smooth. It feels very lightweight. What the name says, it feels like a lip oil. It's like a liquid lip balm with a tint to it. And I think if you are not a fan of gloss because they are too sticky, but you want that shine, then these are a good option for you because first, they will really hydrate your lips. They do give a bit of tint to your lips as well, but they also give you a really nice juicy gloss, but without it being sticky. It's not sticky whatsoever, like it's just literally a liquid lip balm. And because they are pretty liquidy and oily, they are not gonna last on your lips. I feel like for me personally, I do have extremely dry lips that when I wear these don't last long at all. I don't know if it's like my really dry lips just really sucking all the oils in and it like vanishes off my lips, but I will have to constantly reapply this throughout the day if I want to keep the gloss there or if I want to keep that hydration there. So I can imagine that this little bottle will not last me very long at all because I am constantly going to reapply, but it is very comfortable on the lips. I really like how it looks. I like the tint. I think the only thing that I would have liked if it was like, I don't know, more of like a lip tint oil, because it fades off my lips so quick. I wish it would leave a little bit of a tint on my lips so that way my lip color still can look pretty, because for me my natural lip color is so, it's like very cool tone. It's like almost purple, so I sort of look unwell if I don't have anything on my lips, if you know what I mean. So I would have liked it to have, I don't know, like a lip tint oil, you know? Maybe I'm asking for too much. I don't know. I still really like these. They are very hydrating, but I guess I would have just liked them to last a little bit longer just because they don't last long on me at all. So yeah, that is just sort of where I stand. I wouldn't say this is my favorite Colourpop lip formula. The Just a Tint lip crayons are still my favorite. I would say this could be in my top 5, perhaps top 5. I gotta really think about that before I make that claim. So let's go ahead and talk shade by shade. We first have a Dewdrop, which is just a clear gloss, and I think a lot of people will like the clear one because there is no tint to it. This will be a really nice like everyday going to school sort of product if you're not allowed to wear makeup to school. We then have Skinny Dip, and this is described to be a soft warm nude. I personally would describe it to be a milky pink. It has that very like nude aspect to it, and I think for someone that's maybe more fairer than me, this would be a really nice color on you, but on my skin tone it just looks way too milky. It emphasizes that purple color of my natural lips that is not really that flattering on my complexion in my personal opinion. We then have Playa Vista, and this is described to be a warm mid-tone nude, but I would describe this to be more of like a peachy nude. I really like this one. I think if you were maybe a couple shades lighter than me, then this would be like a really beautiful like peachy nude on you. I do like it, but I would prefer it to be a little bit darker, but that's why I love Hot Shot, which is the next color, and this is described to be a rich terracotta. I love Hot Shot because you can really see that like warm terracotta peachy tone on my lips, and because again my lips naturally have that sort of like muted purple undertone where I look very sick, I need something that is going to at least cover that and bring some life back to my lips. Then we have Bengal, which is the one that I'm wearing throughout the video. This is described to be a warm berry, but I would describe this to be like my lips but better. The same reason why I love Hot Shot, Bengal is a bit darker so you can actually see it against my lips, and it does give me some color to my lips enough that I like look alive again. So I definitely could rate these from my favorite to least favorite. So my favorite number 1 is Hot Shot for sure. I would say Playa Vista and Bengal would come in number 2, and then my third favorite would be Dewdrop, and then my fourth favorite would be Skinny Dip. Alright, so getting started with the first look, I'm going to go in with the new Creme Shadow in the shade Moonbeam, and this is going to be our base color, and it's also going to act as our eye primer. I'm just going to use my ring finger to warm up the product and place that on my eyes. I'm mainly focusing this product on my lid space and then a little bit into my crease, like blending it up into my crease area, but mainly we're going to focus this product on our lids. Then I'm going to jump into the palette and take the shade Vagabond, and this is going to be our transition shadow. I'm going to mainly work this in my crease area and sort of blend this shadow into the cream shadow, so there is a nice blended base, because it's a little bit difficult to blend the cream shadow like all the way up to my brow bone and getting a smooth blend. So I'm just going to use this light transition shadow to work this in my crease and achieve that smooth blend. I also take this shadow onto my lower lash line as well, just to sort of work as a base color for the other darker shadows that's going to go on top of it. Next, I'm going into the shade No Bounds, and this is a really dark brown eyeshadow. So we are jumping from a very light sort of medium transition to a very dark brown. So you want to take your time with this, take a little bit on your brush. I'm going to first pack this onto my lid space because that's where I want the most darkness to be, and wherever you place your brush first, that is where the most pigmentation is going to go. So with a lot of the product on my brush, I'm gonna focus this product on my lid, and then once I feel like a lot of the shadow has left my brush, I'm gonna slowly start blending that up into my crease area and slowly get this gradual blend. I also take this onto my lower lash line as well. I'm actually first going to stamp that on underneath my waterline, and then I'll go in with a bigger brush to sort of diffuse and smoke that out. Now I am going into the shade Spirited, and this is a Super Shock shadow. So I'm going to use this shadow dry, and I just want to get the little sparkles from the Super Shock shadow onto my eyes. It's going to look like a satin shadow almost. So every time you tilt your hair, you're just going to see little glitter sparkle through. It's not going to be metallic or anything. It's just layering a little bit of the glitter on top of a really dark matte, and I feel like this really shines because it's layered on top of a darker matte. Then I'm gonna go into the shade Coastline, and I'm gonna use this to highlight my inner corners. This is a very, very pigmented and metallic shadow, so just take a little bit on your brush. You can tap some off on the back of your hand, but I thought the white highlight would complement this eye look since the glitters do reflect white and silver. And I do take a bit of Spirited to layer that on top of the inner corner highlight to give it more dimension and to also tie in the look together. Now I am taking my liquid liner. I'm going to use this to line my lash line and create a little wing. I then go in with a black eyeshadow, and I will use this to sort of smudge out and make my wing more dramatic and smoky. I think for such a dark, intense, smoky eye, a dramatic wing is just necessary. It really complements the look. Then I'll be giving my lashes a good curl and applying mascara to prep them for my false lashes. The false lashes I'm wearing today are from Petite Cosmetics in the style Diva. And this, you guys, is the first look completed. We created a very dramatic dark smoky eye from a very light to medium palette. So I just wanted to show you that diversity, that you can take this palette into more of a very glam look because we have that dark brown shadow. But for my final lip pairing, I went with the new Luxe Lip Oil in the shade Hot Shot. And now onto the second look. I'm gonna first start off with the cream shadow in the shade Camouflage, and I'm gonna use this as my base. I'm just gonna use my ring finger to warm the product up and then place that onto my lid and slowly blend that up into my crease area. Then I'm gonna go into the palette and take the shade Morningside, and I'm going to use this as our transition shadow. I'm just working on top of the cream shadow. I'm just gonna use windshield wiping motions like always to get a really nice diffuse blend up to my brow bone. I also take this onto my lower lash line as well just to give a little bit of definition. So I'm just gonna sweep that from the outer corner right to the inner corner. I'm then gonna go into the shade No Bounds, and I'm gonna take this on a very thin angled brush, and I'm going to start creating a wing. So first I like to place the product at the outer third of my lash line just to get the sort of shape ready and get some smokiness going as well, and then I'll start creating my wing. I think if you are a beginner to eyeliner, using a dark brown shadow or a dark shadow in general is a really easy way to create a wing. I feel like it's more forgiving and there's less pressure when you use an eyeshadow, I feel. So I would highly recommend you use an eyeshadow if you are a beginner. But I do go in with the BFF liquid liner from Colourpop in the shade Grande, which is their brown liquid liner. And I'm just going to use this to line my lash line ever so slightly. You could use a black and that will create a little bit more smokiness to the lash line, but I went with the brown just to keep it in the same color. I just want my lash line to be defined a little bit. Then I'm going to take the shade All Clove and I'm going to place this at the inner third of my eyes. You can see this is very metallic, but it has a lot of silver glitter reflex in it, and those little glitters really shine through. I think it's such a pretty shade. Like, the base of the shadow is peach, but then it has the little silver reflex, and I feel like it really complements the peach matte shadow that we just used as well. So I'll also take this into my inner corners and highlight that entire area. So now I'm going back into No Bounds because I forgot to put this on my lower lash line. I'm only going to place it at the outer third just to connect the liner together, so that way your eyes can look a little bit more rounded but still angular at the same time. Now I'm going to curl my lashes and apply mascara, then I'm going to pop on my lashes. These ones are from House of Lashes, style Natalia Light. And then for my blush, I'm taking the shade Wayfarer and I'm going to place this at the apples of my cheeks and blend that back into my bronzer. Alright you guys, so this is the second look completed. It definitely pulls more to the peachy side, but I really liked how it turned out and hopefully you guys like it too. This technique is very simple and easy. I do this technique all the time. You guys have seen me do it all the time as well. But for my final lip pairing, I went with the Luxe Lip Oil in the shade Playa Vista. And now onto the final look. I'm going to start off with the creme shadow in the shade Laurel, and this is going to be our eye base. I'm just going to use my ring finger to tap that on to my lid space. I'm then jumping into the shade Come Together, and I'm going to use this shade to sort of diffuse out the creme shadow and also work as our transition shadow. So I'm just going to place that into my crease using windshield wiping motions, blending that up towards my brow bone and also towards the outer corners. I then move into the shade Hot Springs, and I'm going to start packing this on at the outer third of my eye and also at the inner third of my eye. We want to try and leave the middle of our lid space blank, so there's only going to be the transition shadow at the center of our eyes. It's sort of just going to give more of like a pinky colorway to this eye look, and it's also going to start deepening out these areas for our darker shadow next. But I do run Hot Springs all over my bottom lash line just to work as a base and give some color there as well. Now moving on to the shade No Bounds, we're going to be doing exactly the same thing. So we're going to focus this at the outer third and also the inner third of our eyes, keeping the middle blank of any extra shadow. But you can see I am using a smaller brush and I am focusing the product a little bit lower to my lid space. I'm not going to bring it up so high into my crease because we do want that gradient transition. And whenever you're doing a spotlight or halo eye, I think having a dark shadow is very important, so that way the halo effect can contrast against these darker outer corners. I'm also going to take No Bounds onto my lower lash line as well, pretty much mimicking what we just did. So just placing this at the outer corner and at the inner third of our lower lash. Now taking the shade Seashells, I'm going to place this right at the center of my eyes. I did not use this shadow wet, and you can see how metallic and pigmented this is. So if you were to use this wet, it's going to be super foiled and high shine, which is beautiful, but I wanted the little specks of glitters to peek through and I wanted it to look a little bit more diffused, so I used it dry. So just placing this right at the center because that's where the most pigmentation is going to be, and then once a lot of the product has left your brush, you want to start diffusing this out towards the brow bone and also towards the darker mattes because you want them to blend. You just don't want like a stripe down your eye. You want them to diffuse into those matte shadows as well. I do take this onto my lower lash line. Once again, we are just going to place this at the center to finish off this halo eye look. Now I am taking my liquid liner to create a very dramatic wing. I think the smokiness of this look requires a dramatic wing, so I went with that. I did go in with a black eyeshadow to smudge that out and make it even sharper. Now I'm just going to curl my lashes and apply mascara, and then I'm going to pop on my lashes. These ones are from House of Lashes in the style Boudoir Light. And then I'm going to take the pressed powder blush in the shade On the Horizon, and I'm going to apply that to the apples of my cheeks and blend that back into my bronzer. Guys, is the final look completed. It's been a while since I've done a halo eye. I don't do halo eyes very often because they're quite hard to photograph, but I think nonetheless in person it's a really beautiful eye look and it's just very eye-catching, and I just love the tones of this look. It's very grungy, very smoky, so I love it and I hope you guys love it too. But for my final lip pairing, I went with the Luxe Lip Oil in the shade Bengal. So that, you guys, was my 3 looks. Be sure to let me know your favorite look in the comments down below. I would love to hear your feedback. But before I let you guys go, I did mention in the beginning of the video that Colourpop did send me the entire collection when I already bought some of the collection myself. So I do have some doubles, so I'm going to be doing a little giveaway for you guys. So the prizes are going to be the eyeshadow palette, the lip tint set, the 2 Jelly Much eyeshadows, and 2 of the creme eyeshadows in the shade Moonbeam and Camouflage. If you guys have joined any of my previous giveaways, I'm going to be doing a little bit different this time because I want to be able to read through the comment section, so I'm going to be doing a little bit different as well, but all details will be down below in the description box, so just open that up. But yeah, you guys, that is going to complete today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. I love you guys and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!